Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Devil Source Postgame Show. I'm Blake Neiman here with Chris Cartman, following Arizona State's 72-66 loss overtime to Baylor. The Sun Devils now falling to 10-5 and 1-3 overall in Big 12 play, suffering their first home loss here at DFA this season. And Chris, it looked like heading into the second half that this one could be trajecting toward a blowout. ASU down 15 points 5 minutes in to the second half, but the Devils rally all the way back to end up forcing overtime. Don't play the best in overtime, and we heard from ASU guard Adam Miller, who's had experience across 4 different high major conferences, and he's a leader on this team and kind of encapsulated the struggle of ASU season has been valuing each possession, and right now the Sun Devils just simply aren't doing that.
Yeah, I asked Adam what's standing out to him about playing in the Big 12. They were just at Kansas. They've already been to BYU. Coming back for this game, it's got a different cadence than the Pac-12 where you go on the road and you play those two teams. He said valuing the possession and every possession mattering a great deal, and that's not really been a strength, I would say, of this particular ASU team or the Bobby Hurley's tenure. Is not been sometimes they'll do it, but on an every game basis, night in, night out.
They haven't been able to put together a full 40 minutes.
Playing 40 minutes every possession, no. First half of this game, I thought that they were lethargic. He said they came out flat. You could tell that there was a big difference in the second half. A factor of that is when they play a lot of full court press. They generated a lot of turnovers that allowed them to come back from down to 15 to force the overtime period. But then they missed a couple easy shots in the overtime period, including BJ had a game high 22 points, first 20-point effort for ASU. They talked about travel snafu, going to Kansas, getting there a little bit late, then coming back, returning late. But look, they had 2 full days after that to prepare for this, and you got to know that Baylor is a really good team, and you're going to have a lot of intensity throughout the duration of the game, not just when your backs are against the wall.
Like you said, Hurley said in the post-game show, or in the post-game, that he thought the team came out flat in those early going. I mean, both sides kind of came out a little bit soft with only 10 points combined by both squads through the first 5 minutes. What did you kind of see through the first half that kind of made for a sluggish start for the Sun Devils?
Well, they had a golden opportunity that they squandered because Baylor's best player got in foul trouble early. He had a poor first half, Lemire. And then basically they were able to overcome that because ASU just didn't have the type of offensive execution or efficiency in that first half. Fell down by 14 points, I think, at halftime. And then that expanded in the early part of the second half before ASU finally got into a higher gear. Three-pointers made by ASU in the first half. BJ Freeman, again, he had a good performance, and some of that was early on. Adam Miller hit a 3, but they weren't moving the ball, sharing the ball, creating good opportunities around the basket as they have in some of these earlier or more recent games. But we kind of knew that going in because Baylor is a very good defensive team, particularly inside the 3-point arc, and they're athletic and active, and they're long, and they do a good job. And ASU just didn't have the right type of juice, is what they said, what Adam Miller said, to be able to combat that. They put themselves way behind.
And they tried to up that juice in the second half by implementing the full court press and trying to get the crowd involved, like they said.
Yeah.
But, they're thin on their bench right now, which is kind of limiting their ability to keep up that intensity throughout the whole game.
Well, I've thought, and this is not just this team, but Bobby Hurley's, for years now, I think his teams have tended to play better when they press more. And they forced turnovers. They got back into the game by not needing to make a bunch of tough shots. They got layups off of transition opportunities. They dominated in the transition department and the box score. But yes, I think if you're Hurley, you got to be careful because they've been playing with 7-man rotations for the last 2 games when they didn't have Josan Sanin, who came back in this game. He didn't have as good of a performance. yeah, his ankle, and he made 1 3, and so you're thinking, okay, like he's just not all the way back yet, which you understand. But it's a fine line because Adam Miller said that he thought that the team needs to press more.
Yeah.
And he said that when they do that, it forces them to be have more intensity, and he's not thinking about being tired because the adrenaline is so high. And I don't disagree with that sentiment whatsoever. I do think that they need to find a way to play harder, more consistently throughout games, and value possessions on the offensive end at a high level. He mentioned, again, like not moving the ball well enough, not moving off the ball well enough, and then you have a bad possession, and then or one player makes a mistake on defense, and then that kind of spirals. These are small things at the margins, but when you're playing in such a tough league against really high caliber opponents, you got to be able to execute this stuff, or else you're going to end up on the losing side too often. And ASU's trending toward being a bubble team at best if it can't win some games like this one tonight.
With Josan Sannon being the leading scorer for this team through the majority of the season, over these past couple of games, BJ Freeman has had to step up into the scoring role, and he has here at home, especially against Colorado, 19 points tonight. He has his first 20-point game in the maroon and gold, and he's starting to really kind of full round his game on both offensively and some defensive possessions. He really created some havoc for Baylor.
Yeah, he was the leading scorer in the Horizon League before he came to ASU. So his background is getting a lot of shots up,
and he plays with some moxie. He plays with this grit. Yeah.
Well, he has 3-level scoring ability. He can shoot the ball from the perimeter. You see that he's somebody that can, as a guard who has like a throwback post up mid game, that he's able to kind of go on short drives and spins and things of that nature. And then also he can finish in around the basket and 6'5" guard. And he's one of these guys that you look at and you go, oh, that's like somebody who makes sense, was a high impact scorer at the mid-major level. And now I think he's settling into being able to do that at ASU when needed. And a lot of games haven't called for that because Alston Mason is good at scoring the ball off the bounce. You got Adam Miller and Sannon, and then of course you have your front court pieces between what Bashir Jihad gives you and Jaden Quainance, right? But they needed him in this game, I thought, to summon that sort of an offensive effort, and he played well. I just think that they haven't been able to put enough of their pieces together in a game over a 40-minute period against the higher end opponents that they face.
Well, it also doesn't help when you're not able to have many second chance opportunities. The Big 12 known for being a very high rebounding conference full of athleticism and physicality, and Baylor being one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. You talked about it in your scouting preview of how that was going to be a key to the game, and the Bears came out and they attacked the glass and dominated the boards.
Yeah, Baylor has 2 of the top 30 offensive rebounders in the country. And their best player came in and had a much better impact in the second half, ended up being their leading scorer in the game, despite some foul trouble. But then OG Anua, their 6'10", sort of, run the floor, jump out the gym, big man, he had 6 offensive rebounds, 4 of which he put back at second chance opportunities. We knew going into this game that was going to be a major factor. ASU hasn't been good enough at preventing those second chance opportunities against this caliber of athlete. And that was, I think, a major deciding factor in what ultimately pushed this game into overtime. Take away a couple of those, and ASU probably has enough in the comeback to win in regulation. And you have to be able to gain rebounds. You can't put everything on Quainance and Jihad. You're going to need your guards to be able to get in there and mix it up and get some of those rebounds, and got to be more physical boxing out.
Coming out of non-conference play, this team was looking in a pretty good position in terms of the broad scheme of the NCAA tournament, sitting at 9-2, only losses to Florida and Gonzaga. But they've kind of gotten a rude awakening entering their new era into the Big 12 Conference, 1-3 start. And they're going to have to start winning these type of gritty games against, these high physical, high athleticism opponents if they don't want to end up being on that bubble conversation that ASU always seems to kind of find its way into. And now we'll have to see how this team responds and and regroups.
Yeah, there's a lot of opponents that are going to be like this in the Big 12, and some are going to be better than this. Iowa State is looming out there as one of the top teams in the country. Houston is also one of the top
West
teams
Virginia
in the
is
country.
on the rise.
West Virginia is up there. ASU is actually, despite what you said accurately about ASU's non-conference and only 2 losses being against really high caliber top 10-ish teams, ASU is 10th among the Big 12 teams right now in NCAA net rankings, Ken Palm rankings. And the forecast is like an 8-12, somewhere between like a 7-13 and a 9-11 type of a season in the conference for ASU. And so what happens is when you get into these types of opportunities for quad 1 wins at home, and there's only going to be maybe another 4 of those left on the schedule, you have to win those at a pretty high level, because it's much harder to expect this team to go on the road and steal those types of wins, the quad 1 types of wins. Now they can do it, and I think they have a chance to if they play really well through 40 minutes and are connected. But when you lose games like this, it makes it harder in each subsequent game, each subsequent week, to push yourself above the NCAA bubble, which is kind of what everybody's trying to accomplish. And if you lose too many of these, then you fall to where you're barely in that conversation. So they play UCF here on Tuesday. That's not one of the better teams in the conference. Those types of games are must win.
Bobby Hurley's been having to deal with a little bit of travel recently, hasn't been too fond of it. Well, the Sun Devils get to stay at home for at least one more game. They'll be in action against UCF on Tuesday, like Chris just said. But for all of us here at Sun Devil Source, for Chris Cartman, I'm Blake Neiman saying so long from DFA as the Sun Devils come up short to Baylor in overtime.